everyone. Welcome to A Feminine Moment. I'm here. This is Cherry Lynn, and I'm here with Dixie Andelin Forsyth, author of Fascinating Womanhood for the Timeless Woman and daughter of Helen B. Andelin. Hi, Dixie. How are you doing?
Hi, Cherry.
So, we're here today to talk about a question that we received on our private Facebook group. And it really has to do with your husband bringing stress home after a long day at work. And her question specifically is, and I'll just read it here. My question is, what do I do when I feel he is too harsh in front of our kids and with the kids?
If I remember correctly, isn't that one where she said he was harsh with her as well?
Yes, he comes home. He is I don't want to get too specific for privacy, but he comes home from a very stressful job and everyone is arguing. Sometimes the kids say, Daddy doesn't love me. I can't ever make him happy. So we're all very stressed.
I did read that one, and I was thinking how it can be a little similar to women whose husbands come home from war. There's some post-traumatic stress that goes on. I think in that line of work, if I remember right what you're talking about, it's potentially very stressful, sometimes dangerous, and sometimes you see things that are traumatic, for example. And some kinds of work like that, including the military, you can't really, nor do you want to really go into details with your spouse because you're wanting to not remember it or things like that sometimes. But any man can have a potentially, not so much emotionally high stress, there's physical high stress, all kinds of stress that they inadvertently bring home. And so I think what's happening is, as you said, he's taking it home and taking it out on family. So I would say, first of all, remember and be careful to not ever try to have disagreements in front of children to protect them. Like if your husband is being unreasonable with your kids, you can see he's taking it out on, don't criticize them in front of them, taking sides. I remember my parents, if one was, well, it wouldn't have been my mother, it would have been my dad, if he was took something out on us, like he was more grouchy or something, my parents would go in the bedroom and talk, and I never heard it. They didn't argue in front of us. They didn't argue isn't probably the right word for them. It's more like discuss it in front of us so that we could see they didn't agree. They always did it privately. But I do understand the mother wanting to protect her children from that. And so I think the best thing to do, this is where understanding men really helps in trying to imagine what is it that and you don't have to know specifically what he's gone through, just like you can know if he comes home like that, this is really high stress. There's maybe something that he's had to see or deal with that is really hard, and he's probably not aware of how he's taking it out. It doesn't mean it's okay, because it's not. But understanding men is really important. So if you can pick a time when, say on a weekend, if he's not working, and depending on his line of work, he may work weekends, but when he's home, because he's obviously got some time off, and when he's in a more of a relaxed state, say he's had a good night's rest in the morning, and you can talk to him and say, I've noticed you seem to have a lot of stress, and trying to get him to communicate with you and say it must be really hard, because if he doesn't seem like the person that you married, something's going on. And you can't really, it's not going to work to try and change him by saying don't do this, because he may feel unloved as well and not really be aware. In other words, if you were to, and don't do this, by the way, if you were to film an interaction like that and have him watch it, he'd probably feel terrible. You can see what he's doing, then he'd feel even more like a loser, which is not his intent at all. But if you know he has a high stress job and has to see things and deal with things that you and I don't have to, such as war, and things like that, there's things that you can do to try to understand and empathize with that. It doesn't mean it's okay for him to mistreat you, but don't try to take that on while he's downstairs in the basement.
Mm-hmm.
You got to make sure he's more upstairs.
What about, I know you made that analogy with your parents and in front of the kids. What about, those women that are saying, but my kids, but my kids, but my kids, like, what about my kids? Do you think it's something, you had said earlier to pull him aside, maybe when he's in a better place mentally? Is that maybe the same case for the kids too?
Yeah. I mean, you mean the same case for the kids, meaning what?
Talk to them privately about
the
things?
children. Yeah. When he's not there, which he's not there some of the time.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a really good idea. Talk to them and tell them the kind of high stress job that he has. And even if you did know some of the things, you wouldn't want to share all those with your kids, but say, there's things that daddy has to deal with or see that are really hard. And it's kind of like going to war. And so we have to be patient with him. And he doesn't mean this. It doesn't mean that it's not still going to hurt them. But your response as a woman can validate him. Instead of, you can't get someone to change unless they want to, first of all. But if they're in the basement, they're not really going to listen to you. Mm-hmm. So the first thing is to try and be of an influence that encourages them to get back upstairs with good food, offer him some time to decompress, to rest, things like that he needs to go back upstairs. If he likes certain music, put that on. Mm-hmm. People are really different. If he likes to exercise, that's even better. But there's all different ways to get back upstairs. And once you know that he needs to be upstairs before this can ever be dealt with, don't even try when you know he's down there. Right. Don't even try, and protect your children by just, as soon as he's out of the room, just say, Dad doesn't mean this.
Yeah. I've always been impressed with that movie, It's a Wonderful Life.
Yeah.
And the end scene, well, not the end scene, but towards the end of the movie, how he comes home. I think his name's George. George comes home.
Yeah, George.
I can't remember.
I can't remember his last name. Yeah, but it's George. Yeah.
Home and he's so crabby and he's firing off. Like, that's what this reminds me of just a little bit. It's obviously not the exact same, but he comes home, and I mean, most women I know, probably including myself, if my husband came home and crabbed at the kids like that and he yelled at them over the silliest things and threw things, he just lost his temper basically in the movie. And I know it's just a movie, but I think we can all relate. And how wonderfully she dealt with that. Do you remember how she just kind of, is everything okay? Like, she was just so supportive, and she didn't fire back at him. She didn't argue with him.
She was focused on him and why, because it wasn't like him. So she thought, she was focused on, are you okay? Rather than
worried about him. Yeah. Yes. Rather than being combative with him. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you're describing to me in a way.
Because, I mean, if the way this was described, this question, this problem, you can kind of tell that that's not normal for him, that he's changed. This work environment is changing him, and he's not dealing with it very well. Mm-hmm. And obviously he might want to look at counseling, but you got to be careful with that as a woman. You can't just say you need counseling.
Right.
I mean, that's probably not going to go over too good either. Mm-hmm. But you can. There's feminine ways to approach things. If he feels like he's number one, and that you're concerned about him, are you okay? And helping him to have good food, relaxation, things that naturally help get him upstairs, and then you can talk to him privately. I've noticed that you seem really tense when you come home. Are you okay? What's going on? And is there any way I can help? Mm-hmm. And things like that, then he won't feel like, it seems like that's the one where she said that he didn't feel loved. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. She can do something about that. Mm-hmm. And then, like I said, talk to the kids privately and support him and just say, he doesn't mean this.
I feel like I have become the nagging wife. I don't want to be this wife I have become.
Right.
We can all relate to that.
Right. Yes. And she can do something about it, because with these principles of fascinating womanhood, it gives us so many more options that are positive, and that that build people instead of the natural gut reaction, which is also to slide back down, so slide downstairs yourself with him, and everything is horrible, so that you dread him coming home. And
right.
your personal relationship is affected when really it's all because of his stress at work, which he's trying to cope with, obviously. Or he'd say, I got to get into some other work. I can't stand this.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't remember which chapter it is in Timeless that talks about downstairs and upstairs. Is it 9? Chapter 9,
Yes,
the brain?
The brain, yeah.
That would be, if anybody watching hasn't read the book, that would be, if you're wondering what we're talking about with upstairs and downstairs, in Dixie's book, Timeless, chapter 9, she talks about upstairs and downstairs. Definitely read that if you're following this video and you want to know.
And then the one right after that is dealing with stress, battling your inner demons or something like that. And that's Fascinating Womanhood for the Timeless Woman. We refer to it as Timeless, but it's long.
Yeah, it's a mouthful a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Is there anything else you wanted to add before I think this has been great information. Is there anything else?
Yeah, that and Understanding Men. Reread those things on Making Him Number One, how to talk to him when he's down, how to offer advice if you need to, and be very careful about advice, because people don't usually want advice unless they ask for it. They don't want unwanted advice, so you got to be real careful and charming, and then if you need to get other help. I mean, if he doesn't do well, you might, if the moment is right, suggest some counseling, some professional help. But there's things you can do in the meantime.
Yeah. Well, great. This has been so helpful. I think we have so many great tips. And I think the biggest one that stands out to me is just the one-on-one attention, one-on-one time with your husband when it's a more positive environment. And the same thing with the kids. I think that's definitely very doable.
Don't try to take him on when he's down there.
Right. That's huge.
It won't go well. Yeah, it won't go well.
Yeah. And I think this applies to men that maybe don't have necessarily as stressful of jobs, but maybe battle anger issues or just come home
or get frustrated. Like they may have had I'm trying to think of Bob. See, he's a neuropsychologist and he has patients, but it's a controlled environment for him because he goes to the hospital, they're there, and he leaves. He doesn't have to have an ongoing relationship with these people, and he has learned to kind of compartmentalize it and put it away, so he doesn't come home and bring it home. Some men have a hard time compartmentalizing it, and they bring it home once in a while.
Yeah,
I would think with certain high stress jobs, I mean, that would be more often than not. And that's why I compared it to the military. Sometimes they have to go for periods of time in high stress environments where they have to just deal with stuff and death and things like that. And I don't know how you ever get used to it. I know some do, but I don't know how you do.
Yeah, I'm sure that when men come home from deployment, I mean, that could be a whole other subject for sure of what they go through. Because I know I have friends with husbands that have been deployed, and when they come home, there's a level of, I don't know if respect is the right word. There's a level of respect that most relationships don't necessarily have to go to, that the wife has to, or the women have to go through when they come home, because they need time.
Well, and if they have post-traumatic stress, that's a whole thing. It takes a long time. It takes a long time to.
I think there's pieces of this that really do relate, and I definitely agree. I think that's very relatable for sure.
So.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for watching. Like or comment or both. If you like our channel, don't forget to subscribe. We also can be found on Facebook at the official Fascinating Womanhood, where you can see a lot more information and daily tips and posts from women just like you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.